Okay, this is one that we thought was a near HM. Has a lot going for it, and nice color, um, nice reflection, and the reflection was done at just the right spot so that all of the treetops are included in the reflection. It's a little bit center composed, and I think that was the only reason that we didn't include this in the HMs. It really needed to have a little stronger competition to compete with the rest of the images.
I agree. There's a nice blush color down toward the horizon above the tree line, and some nice texture in the clouds. I agree with everything that Jerry said as well. The Yerkes Observatory has extremely nice detail throughout. It's well composed. It's shows good depth. It's an architectural image. It's from a good angle, so it adds depth to the image. There's nice texture in the clouds. As I mentioned, good sharpness throughout. The exposure is well controlled.
We also like the fact that the tree on the right didn't merge with the dome, or didn't cover the dome. Nice separation.
Right.
But it was just kind of a ordinary, I'll say ordinary shot that subject matter wise didn't carry through to award this an HM.
Very interesting root pattern coming down across the old stone. To me, I would have liked, it's unfortunate that the tonality of the level of gray, that is, between the roots and the stone are so close together, because if, and there probably is a way in post-processing to pull this out, but to somehow separate the roots from the stone with dodging and burning or whatever techniques in post-processing, I think would have strengthened the image. The sky may have started out as being blown out, and it could potentially be cropped away. I noticed there's a little bit of haloing around the treetops against the sky, that from trying to recover the sky, I think is where that came from. That's why I didn't place this as an HM, but it has a lot of things that bring it very close.
And then that long root is a nice lead in, but it leads right up to the brightest part of the frame, which is the sky. So yeah, really cropping that out or somehow getting rid of that bright sky would have improved this dramatically.
Well, it's a very nice scene of a butterfly on a thistle, and everything that should be sharp is sharp. Nice, very nicely sharp. The weaker part of the image is the sky, and that probably could be reduced considerably by cropping the top almost quarter of the image out to keep it, to remove the distracting sky and focus more in on the butterfly, the thistle, and the softer background. But it's a nice separation of the subject from the background by, using softening the sharpness of the background in camera.
And it looks like this shot did have the potential to be cropped heavily. Seems to me that 25% of the frame here is the real photograph. Heavily cropped, should be heavily cropped on the top, on the left, on the right, and a little bit on the bottom, so that the butterfly wing and the thistle stand out against the nicely out of focus remaining background. Well, I think we like the composition, and like the fact that that there's detail in the shadow area. Just decided that the sunlight, the background light that's surrounding the lighthouse was just a little too overpowering to compete with the rest of the images. And particularly on the left, we have kind of a loss of the water line. On the right, it has a nice sharp line. On the left, the water pretty much merges right in with the sky. But as I said before, the composition is nice, and the sharpness and detail, particularly in the shadow areas, is nice. It just was a little bit. The lighting was just a little bit too overpowering. Move it up to an HM.
I agree. I like the angle of the viewpoint onto the lighthouse. You can see just enough of the left-hand side of the wall, of the left-hand wall of the lighthouse to add depth. Had the photographer been standing 5 or 10 feet further to the right, that would go away and it would be more flat and two-dimensional. But the photographer shooting from where they stood was able to capture that enough of the side and enough of the structure of the catwalk to reveal the depth in that image. So that is a strong point for the image as well. This is a nice scene of 2 farm buildings. It's shot from a good angle to reveal the depth of the buildings in relationship to each other. It adds 3-dimensionality, being showing the more than just one wall of each building. Good detail in the stonework, nice color, nice image, but we didn't feel it quite made it into the HM category.
And I like to sometimes in photographs like this, where you have a strong blocker on the left-hand side of the frame, put that strong blocker, in this case the tree trunk, is on the right side. And so that when normally Western world we read from left to right, the first thing that the viewer's eye would see would be the barn in the foreground, and the viewer could concentrate on that barn and be held into the frame, because the tree if this were flipped horizontally, the tree would be on the right and stop the eye from going out of the frame.
That's a good point. The other thing I think you mentioned, Jerry, was a little bit of the sky on the right-hand side, as the frame is currently the right-hand side. A little bit of inconsistency in the blues there along the right-hand edge, between the edge of the frame and the edge of the building. It's an interesting image. I assume it's a composite with the sky in there. Very interesting image. I think to strengthen it, to me, the bright vertical side of the wall, or the edge of the wall, kind of, to me, divides the frame into 2 parts and makes my eye go back and forth from left side to the right side. Which side am I supposed to focus in? And I think what I would consider doing would be possibly dodging and burning, or burning in this case, that wall edge, reducing the brightness a little bit if possible to still somewhere brighter than the wall along facing to the right, but a little darker than it is. But even more so, I would consider possibly giving up a little bit of the right edge of the frame if it were possible to have more on the left. And that way, to me, it would be more of it would sit in a more balanced way, instead of teetering between that middle dividing line. It would tend to make it rest a little more squarely, in my eye at least.
Yeah, I'd even suggest perhaps another alternative to the cropping. Um, Jeff's point about burning the wall is certainly appropriate. I might consider making this more strongly vertical by cropping off the bright reflection in that cabinet so that you crop just to the right of the chair to get rid of that hot spot. And then I think the most dramatic part of the outside the window scene is the strong lightning streak. Could even stand to crop a little bit off the left to emphasize that lightning streak and make this, instead of a slightly horizontal, make it definitely a vertical image. Just another option, I think, to improve the composition. As is, it's very busy, lots of competing hot spots and dark spots, and need to kind of tone down the contrast. And I think it can be done by burning that one area and cropping out the rest. This has the strong point of this image is the silhouetted sails against the setting sun. Very center composed, unfortunately, and there's lots of extra space surrounding the boat. This is another one of those images where 25% of the frame would have been a much stronger image. Cropping at the top, the left, the right, even the foreground where the waves are breaking against the shore. You really need to emphasize the strongest part of the image here, which is the sailboat and sails against the setting sun.
I agree. And to me, the very front wave, which is probably the water washing up on the beach, has a bright, it's picking up that sunset color. But to me, it's a bit of a distraction. So I agree with Jerry that cropping would help the image, and also taking a look at the horizon. To my eye, it looks like it might be a little bit, a couple degrees off. So leveling that and working on some alternative cropping to emphasize the subject, because it has some great qualities to it. The sailboat in front of the setting sun, and the beautiful color in the sky. There's a lot to work with there. So I think I agree with Jerry that some judicious cropping could really strengthen the image. Well, this is an interesting image. It's one of those images that in one still frame kind of projects you through space and time and condenses that into a single frame. There's some strong elements of leading lines and the patterns in the platform, the walkway, the platform. I think the tennis shoes coming across were captured. I don't know how long of an exposure this was, but it was long enough to get some motion in there. That, along with the conveyance, whether it's a bus or train, I'm not really sure, in motion, that way adds some excitement. And then there's some left to right reflections, red and white reflections. I'm not exactly sure the source of those, but all that movement and the cloud movement in the sky add interest and excitement to me, to the image.
I think just the overall composition and, or let's put it this way, the streaking lights and the diagonals, the horizontals, just made this a little bit too busy to move it up to an HM. But we like the sharpness on the buck and the sharpness of the branching pattern to the right of the buck. But the top hat on top, a good 1/3 of the top is probably unnecessary. Should have been cropped, probably. Looks like there's enough sharpness there to to carry through. The bottom 10% perhaps should have been cropped. And in order to improve the composition, maybe a little bit on the left. This is another one of those where, while not exactly center composed, the subject is small relative to the overall size of the frame, and kind of lose the head of the deer that's grazing, but heavily cropping on the top, a little bit on the left, a little bit on the bottom, I think could have improved this dramatically and called greater attention to the viewer's eye on the nicely posed, very distinct silhouette of the buck in the frame.
I agree, and I think Jerry's right on with the cropping suggestions. I do like the framing effect that the tree has on the deer. I think it strengthens the composition, but having less on top and less on the left side, maybe a little bit less on the right side, would strengthen it, and on the bottom as well. I do like there's just a little bit of shadow detail in the rows. I think those are whatever crop that was, leading, has the effect of leading into the deer, but it visually has, the image has a good visual first impression.
Yeah, I like the overall impact of this. I like the effect of the kind of varying tones of white around the head, and just thought the composition was good, and the overall effect was, should I say, different but pleasing. And eliminating this one from the HM consideration was just based on perhaps those kind of subjective impressions, or just the fact that the HMs that we ultimately selected were a little bit stronger than this one.
Well, I like the bee. I like the perspective. I like the backlighting on the flowers. To me, the sun was just a little overpowering for me. But other than that, I really like this image.
I think it's got strong sharpness throughout, and it's just too bad that that sun couldn't have been covered up a little bit more by either by the petal that is in front of the sun, or by moving the sun back to an area where there'd be a little bit more ability, just because of the size of the flowers, to completely conceal the sun. That it certainly has a nice kind of focusing effect for the viewer's eye to go to, but it just turns out that the sun, the globe of the sun that's showing above the current flower is just a little bit overpowering for it to be an HM.
This image struck me right away as a very good black and white, made from a subject that is often just looked past when you go to take a picture, especially a black and white photograph. If you're in a forest with a lot of vegetation, there's just a lot of busy work going on, and it's hard to it's hard for anything to come to the forefront and in an interesting way. And I think this accomplishes that very well. There's a lot of interesting patterns and texture, and the variation in tonality from dark to light is very effective. And the leaves in the dark leaves that are toward the center of the photo, and upper center of the photo really bring you in and show their interest, and then get you to go through the rest of the photograph. And wasn't sure if I'd consider this an abstract or what I would consider it, but it's a successful photograph that I like a lot.
I really have no further comment. I agree completely.
I like the engagement of the subject with the photographer, with the camera. I like the texture in the skin and the cap, and like the expression on his face. I like the way that the cigar and his fingernails form an arc, and all leads up, points toward his face, and bring you into the photograph. I think it's a strong portrait, and for the most part has very nice lighting. There are a couple issues with the lighting. I think Jerry might get to in his commentary, but to me, this is an impactful image that I think works very well.
Yeah, we were commenting on the fact that the lighting around the insides of the eyes probably could have been brightened a little bit so that we can see a little bit more detail there. And we also were wondering whether or not the kind of merger with the background on the left side of the cap and even on the ear was a little bit problematic. Probably keeping this perhaps even out of the top 3. But we felt overall the kind of communication with the viewer and the overall composition was very good, and certainly warranted an HM. I think this has a really nice feel, if we can use that word in in a critique. I like the color combination here. I like the overall composition. I like the kind of balancing of the doorway with the brighter green leaves on the right, leaves and needles on the right. I don't know if that's a cedar tree, probably needles. But just overall like the feel of this image. Perhaps the tree trunk on the right is a little bit brighter than it needs to be. And I know Jeff pointed out that it might have been improved also if the sidewalk or the walkway up to the door would have been toned down a little bit. But overall, I think this the feel of this warrants it being classified as an HM or awarded an HM.
I agree. What caught me about this image was there's so much dark, so much shadow, so much black in the image that it would have been very easy to lose all that shadow detail to just pure black, and that's not the case. The photographer did a very good job in preserving that detail. Everything's sharp that needs to be sharp. It's an interesting subject matter. The only issue I think probably that I can point to that we discussed was on the left-hand side, there's a little bit more bright area that is a little bit distracting in the image. Otherwise, I think it's good subject matter, and it's well done.
Yeah, we figured that this needed to be a horizontal so that the steering wheel could be included. Cropping to a vertical just by eliminating the bright spot on the left and the bright spot on the right to keep that kind of pattern part of the window in the frame would not help, because you lose the context that's provided by the steering wheel. But I think we both agreed that the left-hand side of the frame could have been cropped just a little bit, or maybe even a lot, to eliminate that bright spot on the left side of the frame. But there's great detail in the face and in the reflection in the eyeglasses, and really compels the father, the viewer, to look at the look at all the detail that's revealed here in a relatively difficult lighting situation.
Well, this is just a nice kind of a dreamy image, a soft focus almost. It's a long exposure, I presume. The only sharp-ish parts of the image are toward the right side, and even those probably aren't tack sharp, but just the dreaminess and the color and the subtlety of the image, I thought, made it very powerful.
And I do like the way the bright spot in the sky above the smoke clouds is just a little bit darker and keeps the viewer's eye in. The reflected area is nice as well in that regard. But it didn't rank up there in the top 3, but certainly was a worthy honorable mention. This is one of the images, I think, that the more you look at it, the more it grows on you. The birdhouse there is a little bit center composed, but the overall tonality and kind of whites and dark blacks really set this off. The ferns in the lower kind of diagonal right side of the frame are nicely done. The fence line is nicely cropped, and the top of the frame really keeps the viewer's eye focused on the fence. The larger slats of the fence on the left side keep your eye coming back to those, the viewer's eye coming back to those, and we thought this was a very strong image and worthy of an HM as well.
Yeah, I agree with what Jerry just said, and to his point about it growing on you, it definitely grew on me. Every time I looked at this, I found something else to find interesting, and it was, I guess, worthy of an HM. Very nice image.
Yeah, I think both of us like the simplicity of this. It appears to be just a straight-on shot. The diagonal shadow really is nicely placed in the frame. Color is nice, and certainly the composition is nice. I don't know if this is a sycamore tree or a eucalyptus tree, but the bark pattern is very interesting. Perhaps the subject matter isn't quite as compelling as what we ended up selecting as our top 3, but this is certainly also a very nice HM.
Well, this composite has good initial impact, visual impact. It's 2 very different subjects placed together, which is probably part of the point, and comes off pretty well. I think the artist has done a good job with reconciling the 2 different lighting situations from the statue versus the lizard, and I think has done a good job in bringing those 2 images together in a successful way.
I like the way the leg and the tail kind of frame the nose on the face. I like the brightness gradation here, where you got the brighter areas on the left and the darker areas on the right. not quite sure, of the compatibility of the two images here, the stone face and the lizard, but it certainly does have visual impact, good color impact, and pleasing composition. I think we like the exposure on this image. Once again, the darker background is nicely out of focus. The composition is good. Perhaps what kept this out of the top three was just the fact that the pistil of the flower was just a little bit out of focus, and since it's against the dark background, it really could have used just a little bit more sharpness, even to carry it into the top three. But we certainly thought this merited an HM.
Yeah, definitely. And the color, it pushes the limit of red just about as far as you could push it successfully before everything falls apart. But this does it very well. And for the most part, sharp where it should be and soft where it should be, the pistil of the flower being the only real exception, but very, very nice image.
And here I think we like the simplicity of the photograph. The oak leaf there is nicely placed in the frame. The lines are very nice. Color composition is very good with this kind of off brown, the upper left, and the darker grays and almost to black in the lower right. The leaf probably could have been a little bit sharper, and if it were a little sharper, this might have been rated a little bit higher. But we like the overall composition and simplicity of the image, and thought it was appropriate to give it an HM award.
I like the kind of an arcing shape in the sandstone, whatever kind of stone that's shot upon, being an arc, and then an arc in the highlight, and then the arcs in the lines that come down through add a lot of movement to the image, which I thought was a good thing.
I think this is a successful attempt at making a strictly geometric shot that has a nice color combination, very nice symmetry. I think the only way to improve this slightly would be to crop just ever so little off the bottom, so that the arc on the bottom matched the arc at the top of the frame. And the same might be said on the left-hand side. We've got this little bit of gray in the arc that could have been cropped off. Perfect. So that this is actually a difficult shot to get the geometry correct here. Just a slightly different angle of the camera would have thrown the what is I view as perfect symmetry off just enough to cause problems. But as rendered here, this is a really nice effort on making a symmetrical, geometric image with good composition and nice color.
Yeah, if you're off by just a couple of degrees when you're shooting straight up like that, and if you aren't just in exactly the right spot and are very meticulous with your choice of lenses and your technique, the circle gets out of circle, whatever that term is for that, but it's pretty hard to fix in post-processing. So getting it right in camera, as this photographer did, is a nice feat, and it makes a good, successful image. I agree with Jerry's comments on the trying to match the arcs between the four sides of the image.
So, yeah, kind of A for technique and effort.
Well, the solitude of this image struck me initially, and nice reflection. There's just a slight amount of movement in the water, but nice reflection, nice pastel sky color, interesting pattern in the rock, and somewhat the lower left or lower right edge of the frame starts to lead you in, and then you pick up the reflection of the rocks and curve back around to get up to the tree. So it's I think it's a successful composition. It's possibly a little bit geared toward the center, which is somewhat offset by the slope of the stone from the left side coming down toward the water. But I think it was a very good image, and it was at one time a contender for the higher or the other awards. This is a high award. This is the Outstanding Youth Teen Award, and it is an outstanding youth teen image. It was also part of the overall competition, so it was right up there in the running with a number of other really good images.
This is one of those shots that, in terms of improvement, you might try flipping horizontally so that the bright sky is on the left and the dark sky is on the right. And then after it's flipped, perhaps cropping a little bit off of the right to just eliminate some of the center composition. But as shown, we thought this was a very strong image and worthy of the Youth Award. Well, in terms of overall impact and composition, this is very well done. Like I like the framing of the image with the dark on the top and the darker green grass on the bottom. The cloud of dust from the sliding base runner is pretty dramatic. The colors on the two players is good, and overall we thought this was a very powerful image with lots of color impact.
Excellent post-processing to bring out all of those characteristics, and I really like how the colors in the uniforms were developed in the catcher's guard, the front piece. On the chest is the colors in that, along with the color of the red uniform, really really pop, along with the blue of the uniform of the player that's sliding. So this is a very, very well done, well captured, and well processed, successful image.
Right, and I think it looks like this was taken in bright sunlight, and the catcher, most of the catcher is in, except for his right arm, is in a shadow area, and the detail both on the chest and lower body of the catcher and on the helmet and shoulder of the base runner is really done nicely without being obviously manipulated, so that the detail shows through. The shadows are still there in the appropriate places.
Well, there's just so many things going for this image. You've got a lighthouse, you've got water, you've got fog, you have birds in flight, you have sunrise, and it's well executed. I don't know what else what else you can ask for in a photograph. It's really a successful photograph. The only things I would say are if there is any more highlight detail to pull back in the sun coming across the water through the fog, I would tend to do that. I also might consider making a little bit more of a panoramic crop to it and reducing the size toward the top. But that aside, this is a very nice image, very powerful image, and it's hard to get all those birds in flight sharp too. So it's well done and it's well processed.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff's kind of making it a little bit more panoramic, crop the top, even crop a little off the bottom. And this one might have been improved also by flipping horizontally. It's hard to say. I have to do it myself to see if I like it better that way. But overall, certainly a very nice image. And we selected it as a second place image. Well, I think both of us, when we were reviewing the images, gave strong consideration for this to be the best of show. The eagle is very powerful. The sharp focus throughout on the eagle is fantastic. I'm not sure how perhaps this is cropped relatively heavily to get the tail feathers and the beak and eye of the bird in sharp focus. There's nice detail in the whites, which is bald eagles is often very, very, very difficult to achieve. And we thought this was a clear best of show image. We both, I think, thought that perhaps it could have been improved a bit by cropping a little bit off the right, or maybe even a lot off the right, to make this more of a vertical than the slightly horizontal format that it's shown in. The area on the right is bright and really doesn't have much information in it. Thought it could use a little cropping on the right, but even as is, we thought this was the best of show.
It's a powerful image. I agree with Jerry's comments on the things to consider for cropping, but an eagle's a big bird and it's hard to get sharpness from the tail feathers all the way up to the eyes, and it was done very well here. And keeping the white feathers from being lost in highlight is not easy to do, and it was done very well, very effectively here. Good sharpness throughout, the good engagement of the eagle and its gaze. It's just a fabulous image, so well deserving of best of show.